Good morning and welcome back to another edition of Voir Dire. It's been a little time off due to a work schedule that really kept me from taking the time to do what I needed to do. Felt as though I needed to focus on clients. For a while, we had some big trials, and that's what we had to do to make things happen. But a lot of news breaking here, a lot of unfortunate tragedy taking place, and what I'm referring to is a alleged homicide up in Frederick, Colorado, about 30 miles north of Denver, and it's the Chris Watts story. And now let's be clear, Mr. Watts has a presumption of innocence, and we will afford him that presumption of innocence. But a judge has signed an affidavit for an arrest warrant to have him held pending investigation and formal filing of charges, which will take place Monday or Tuesday of this week. So it'll be either the 20th or 21st. And it's anticipated that he's going to be charged with at least 3 counts of first-degree murder and some tampering charges, but frankly, those are insignificant into the big picture of things. For those who don't know or haven't heard about this case yet, the Chris Watts story is that Mr. Watts claims that his wife basically left for an appointment and didn't return. And his wife is Shannon Watts. She's 34, and they have 2 children, 4 and 3. Bella and Celeste, respectively. And a police report was made saying that they're missing persons. Things just didn't add up, but a search was conducted. Mr. Watts actually went on the news media and made claims that he had no idea what was happening. He had no idea where the family was. It's unlike Shannon to just disappear like this. And that was as late as Wednesday of last week. And then Thursday of this week, Thursday evening, Chris Watts gets arrested for 3 counts of first-degree murder, being held for investigation of 3 counts of first-degree murder, which obviously carries the potential of a death penalty, as well as a minimum of life without parole here in Colorado if he was convicted. And as the information has come out this week, like I said, we haven't seen the affidavit for the arrest warrant, but that affidavit should be available this week. I believe Monday it's anticipated that it'll be released to the public, but there's speculation that the alleged murder took place in the home, which now people are speculating that either there was probably strangulation or maybe perhaps a drowning of these individuals. And I can tell you, I have done strangulation cases, okay? They are very difficult cases because one can pass out relatively quickly when they're being choked, being strangled. But to actually kill someone by strangulation, I think has got to be one of the most cold-blooded things that one could do to another person, because they may stop struggling, but they have to literally restrict that airway for anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes so that the person's actually dead, deceased. I mean, that is like the textbook definition of after deliberation. Basically, I want to kill this person and I did it after thinking about it. How could you not think about it while you're looking at them, having your hands wrapped around their neck? And that's assuming that that's what took place. We don't know for sure, but we'll find out soon enough. But that is probably one of the more cold-blooded crimes that one could be accused of. And what makes it even more shocking, I think, and what most people don't realize is, I mean, this kind of stuff happens all the time. Why are we hearing about this particular case? I don't know. I mean, Chicago had, 91 murders a couple of weeks ago? I didn't see anybody, even on the TV, about a picture of what their family story was. But here we have nice middle America, family, husband, wife, 2 kids, 1 on the way. Everything seemed to be perfect. That was, at least it was portrayed as perfect. But now we're also finding out that it is anything but perfect. Apparently the wife had some suspicions that Chris Watts, there was infidelity. They've had financial issues. These people were obviously living beyond their means. They filed for bankruptcy some two years ago. And I'm saying, and I'm certainly not saying that just because somebody files for bankruptcy that makes them a murderer, but one can start to think that perhaps Mr. Watts wanted to start anew and begin again. And so some other facts that have come out is that apparently Mr. Watts worked at a petroleum company here in town, a very respectable oil company. I don't know what he did, but apparently it was alleged that the bodies, at least of the 2 girls and possibly that of the wife, Shannon, were recovered in, I've heard different reports, but the tanks, oil and gas tanks that are near an oil well drilling site where the oil gets pumped into. It sounds as though that's where the bodies may have been recovered. And once again, think about the seriousness, the cold-blooded nature of a case like this, where whether it's through strangulation by putting one's hands around their necks or doing something else, but obviously there's no indication that there was blood from gunshots or stabbing or anything like that, because the police had searched the house, although now there's some suspicion that everything took place in the house. So to kill your wife and 2 children, wrap them up basically, put them in the car under the cover of darkness so that people wouldn't see, I'm assuming from somehow in the garage, and then transport them to basically these oil and gas sites where basically no one will look or go into unless you lead them to this information. And that comes back to the fact that this Mr. Watts apparently made a full confession to the police. Otherwise, how would they have found the bodies? He could have obviously simply lawyered up, proclaimed his innocence, or not said anything at all, and possibly even see if these bodies ever showed up before they had decomposed so badly that no one would even be able to recognize them. So he did that cold-blooded nature of it. Then he goes on TV, and proclaims that he knows nothing about what is going on. And some of the language that he used was rather interesting. He kept referring to this as a nightmare. Is it a nightmare, or is it more of a tragedy? Nightmares are more of something, maybe you've done something, you're worried about something, it keeps coming back. So Mr. Watts then obviously has now been arrested, and he's in custody up in Weld County. Weld County is a very nice people up there. As the city of Denver, the population of Denver has moved farther north because, frankly, you can get more bang for your buck when it comes to buying property and homes and things of that nature. More and more people are moving up to that area. It's seen a lot of development, a lot of growth. The police department up here, Frederick, I can't imagine it has more than 8 or 10 police officers. And I saw from one of the press conferences that the Colorado Bureau of Investigation was called in to assist. And the Colorado Bureau of Investigation is kind of an overall state police agency that comes in and helps other jurisdictions when they need help doing things. They'll also do any of the DNA or any other kind of samplings that are going to be done through the various forensic laboratories on any evidence, if any is in fact recovered. And so Weld County predominantly over the years has been known as kind of a farming community. The county seat is up in Greeley, Colorado, and that area has changed as well. And a lot of farm cattle ranching up there, a lot of cow milking, things like that. The cattle industry. You can go into Greeley and you can, they joke, the smell of manure, and that's the smell of money. because a lot of people have gotten extremely wealthy over the years in the cattle industry up there in Weld County. Generally very conservative jurisdiction, although they've seen a lot of gang violence up in Greeley over the last several years. And I think that has a lot to do with the population of people that have come there. A lot of young men have got involved in gangs recently up there, and they have a lot of gang violence, a lot of shootings up there in Greeley. But this case, obviously, the case of Chris Watts is the one that has really sparked the interest of everybody, and obviously just because of the nature of it. So the jurisdiction is going to be rather interesting. There's no reason that the venue is going to get changed for any purpose, because there's going to be, at least 12 people when we get to this jury, plus some alternates, that will have heard nothing of this case, will be completely have their head buried in the sand, and will be a fair and impartial juror on this case. The question then becomes, since there's a confession, why are we going through this? Well, we have to give Mr. Watts due process. And in that due process, he can make the prosecution prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt to each and every element of the offenses charged. And if they fail to do so, it would be the oath and obligation of the jurors to find Mr. Watts not guilty if the DA failed to do that. From what I know, at this point, this is going to be a difficult case for the defense. Mr. Watts has not retained private counsel. He has the Office of the Public Defender's Office, and the Office of the Public Defender has some very, very good attorneys. And particularly, and I think what is going to have to be considered by the elected DA up there, Michael Rourke, who's a good man. The elected DA has been up there for several years. He basically took over when the other DA, the elected DA, ran for Congress and won. But I remember Mr. York from his days in Arapahoe County. He was a very straight shooter, very competent, thorough prosecutor. And there's no doubt that the juror or the district attorneys up in Weld County are just as competent. They handle a lot of cases up there. They handle a lot of serious violent crime up there. So these people are going to, the odds are in their favor. But the question then becomes of the elected DA is this the type of case that warrants seeking of the death penalty? Colorado still has the death penalty. Certainly here we have multiple murders, aggravating factors. And did I mention that Shannon Watts, they believe that she was 15 months pregnant. Okay. Now, under Colorado law, that is not a person yet. And so no charges related to murder would be charged as it relates to the unborn fetus. But there's a couple of unrelated charges that could be charged as related to that, but not first-degree murder. So the district attorney is going to have a tough decision to make whether the death penalty should be sought in this particular case. Colorado has not been very forthcoming in dishing out the death penalty lately, and it may be on the table. I'm sure the DA will tell them that they will be considering it, and that may warrant, for example, a plea bargain. Perhaps this is the kind of case whereby the district attorney will say, we'll take death off the table if your client pleads guilty straight up, takes his 3 consecutive life sentences, plus any other charges that they can get him on, and this matter's wrapped up and goes away. Saves the taxpayers a lot of money in the long run because of appeals and everything that would take place if a death penalty was imposed. And obviously the amount of mitigation work that would have to go in by the defense investigators to get this case set for trial. It would probably be 2 years out by the time we actually got to trial. So maybe the district attorney will seek a quick resolution of this matter. We will have to wait and see. Once we have an affidavit, Mr. Watts will be formally charged. I think his bond was set right now so high that he couldn't do it, but ultimately once those charges are filed, they'll set a no bond hold, and it's not like he's going anywhere, particularly if he's confessed. And then the matter will be set for a preliminary hearing, and what they call a proof evident presumption great means that the proof is evident and the presumption is great that Mr. Watts would have committed this crime or did commit this crime, and then he would be held without bond during the pendency of this particular case. And at that preliminary hearing, basically the detectives would get up and regurgitate their affidavit for an arrest warrant, and the judge would find probable cause. The defense may ask a few questions during that process, but not a whole lot will take place. Then the matter will be set for an arraignment, whereby at that point either a plea of guilty or not guilty will take place. If there's going to be any type of mental defenses, that would have to be raised at that particular time. If the DA is going to seek the death penalty, they would have to let the defense know shortly after the arraignment date. Usually, I think within, I can't remember the exact date, 30, 60 days from that arraignment date, so that the defense can prepare. But it's not going to be a secret, I'm sure. It's either going to be on the table or it's going to be off rather quickly. And then ultimately trial will come. And from what we know, it doesn't look good. And the defense, although I've been in the defense shoes where it looks really troublesome, it looks very concerning that you may not have much to work with. But ladies and gentlemen, hold on. This is a type of case where the public defender's office is going to devote a lot of resources and a lot of attorneys to this particular case. Investigators, they will probably get 2, 3, 4 investigators to work on this case immediately to try and go out there and figure and see what they can do anything that they can to try and maybe, see if maybe the police, did something, the confession that was allegedly made. Maybe it was through psychological coercion. Maybe there was something flawed with that where his statement can be thrown out. At that point, then you have some stuff to work with. Maybe it was an intruder that took the wife and children. Who knows? But that would be based upon if the statement was obtained illegally and it couldn't be used at trial. Then the defense has something really to work with, because the defense gets to argue all reasonable inferences drawn from the evidence or the lack thereof. And only thing that matters in court is what is legally permissible under the rules of evidence. So it has to be legal and competent evidence in any kind of a trial. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. But, they have got a lot of time, and I'm sure the defense will do all that they can to slow this down. They'll want to consult with experts. Obviously, their own forensic pathologist wants to get the autopsy back, which will determine cause of death. It's going to be interesting to see, how much fluid, whether there's oil and in the lungs, whether they were drowned maybe in the bathtub or whether they were strangled. But the forensic pathologists will be able to determine that. In very few cases, and I currently have one pending now, it's very difficult to determine. It's not very difficult to determine cause of death. But when that cause of death is undecided, other than they can say we believe it is a murder, but we can't say how and by what means, it gives the defense something to work with. And as a criminal defense attorney, that's what I'm going to be looking for in this particular case, although I'm not associated with the case in any way. The defense is going to have to see what they can do to obviously zealously represent Mr. Chris Watts in his, murder case of the alleged murders of his wife and 2 children and unborn child. And that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough. The defense is going to want to slow it down. They're going to want to leave no stone unturned. They're going to investigate any alternative theories that can possibly be done, and they're going to try to look at anything that they can as it relates to that interrogation. What happened? I can tell you once I had a case where the police kept saying, "You're a good Christian man. Let's do the right thing. Let's get you the help that you need, you deserve. We're going to get you that treatment." Well, in reality, the police aren't going to get him treatment if he confessed. And when he did ultimately confess, he didn't get the treatment that the police offered him. He was, given some silver shackles around his wrists and put into jail. And so, not knowing all the facts as of just yet, but I would be looking at trying to challenge any statement made to the police and any search made of the home, whether the police exceeded any authorization to search the home, if there was any given, whether it was withdrawn, and more importantly, I would be looking at the statement that was made in the circumstances. There's such a thing as psychological coercion. In that particular case that I spoke of a moment ago, that particular case, the judge threw the statement out, and not just saying that it was obtained illegally. They were saying it does through psychological coercion, which is the equivalent of basically beating somebody with a rubber hose and saying, confess, confess, confess. So that's where I think I would be focusing upon right now, and possibly even getting the client psyched so that you can find out if he's got any mental health issues at this time. So there's a lot of work going on, and both sides are going to be real busy. And the important thing is going to be once charges are filed and that affidavit is released. So hopefully next week, after the affidavit is released, we'll have some more information to bring you, and we will provide, our commentary. And I think we provided a little different perspective on this particular case because, well, I'm a criminal defense attorney. I probably know some, if not all, of the players involved, and I handle these type of cases where there are just really, really bad facts. And so my hat goes off to both the authorities and the district attorney's office for, kind of cracking this case. And I also tip my hat off to the public defenders or other counsel that Mr. Watts obtains if he chooses to do so, because they're going to have a difficult road ahead, and I wish them well. But I think there's going to be lots of twists and turns in this particular case, because anytime a man is alleged to have killed his wife and 2 children, an unborn child, it's not good. We look forward to seeing you again on the next We look forward to seeing you again on the next podcast of Voir Dire. We're going to try and get back to a regular schedule and start putting out content on a hopefully near daily basis. We have got through some busy trial schedules, so we look forward to speaking with you. If you like this podcast, please continue to download it. If you watch this on YouTube, please continue to subscribe and hit that little bell for notifications as well, and we'll try to keep you informed as to what's going on. Have a great day. This is Scott Reisch from Voir Dire.